Everyone thought it would be just another routine hearing, until Jasmine Crockett calmly placed documents on the table that left Greene visibly unsettled, defensive, and exposed before a national audience. Something felt different on Capitol Hill that morning. There was a quiet tension, hard to explain but easy to sense. You could see it in the way aides exchanged glances, in the nervous shifting of seats, and in how Representative Jasmine Crockett carefully aligned her documents as she waited. For her chance to speak, C-SPAN was streaming. Reporters in the back were scribbling early notes. Most expected a repeat of past hearings. But Jasmine had arrived with a different plan. She adjusted her glasses, exhaled slowly, and leaned in toward the microphone. The room quieted. "Thank you, Mr. Chairman," she began, her tone calm yet firm. "I want to raise what I believe is a serious breach of public trust by a fellow member of this chamber." The room stirred. Heads turned, cameras zoomed in. Jasmine remained steady. "I'm referring to Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, and a number of financial irregularities I believe require public review," she went on, starting with campaign funds that appear to have been redirected toward private use, through 2 Georgia-based shell companies. A low murmur spread across the room. Greene leaned in, eyes fixed on Jasmine. Her hands, once folded, began to tense. "You're just making things up," Greene snapped from across the table. Jasmine remained composed. "I have documentation, not speculation," she answered, holding up a slim folder. "And I would appreciate being allowed to speak without interruption." The chairman tapped his gavel. "Order. Let the representative continue." Jasmine turned to the first page. Federal Election Commission records show that nearly $130,000 in campaign money went to a company called Oak Star Strategies, which notably has no known physical address. She paused, letting that sink in. Greene shifted in her chair. "That's a real firm and you know it," Greene said sharply. "No, I do not," Jasmine replied, briefly glancing in Greene's direction. "After 3 phone calls, 2 disconnected lines, and a formal FOIA request, I still haven't found a single person connected to it." That moment changed the tone in the room. Staffers exchanged glances. A young assistant in their 20s began frantically typing into a tablet. Behind the dais, a cameraman whispered something to his partner. Then came the tweets. Jasmine sensed the shift, but she stayed focused. "Also," she said, flipping to the next page, "there's a reimbursement. Feed for a trip to Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. 3 nights, 5-star resort, private jet. All labeled under strategy sessions." Greene leaned forward, raising her voice. "That trip was cleared. Stop twisting facts." "I have flight logs, Marjorie," Jasmine responded, gently but firmly. "Would you like me to read them?" Aloud. The atmosphere grew heavier. Committee members fidgeted. Someone coughed. Even the chairman leaned in, unsure how far this would go. Jasmine glanced at the file again, but did not read from it. Instead, she spoke softly. "If taxpayer money is being used to fund luxury trips for private matters, the public deserves transparency. And if there is dishonesty about where that money goes, it is our responsibility to bring that to light. You are just playing games," Greene snapped. "This is nothing but a witch hunt." "Then the truth should not worry you," Jasmine replied, her voice steady and cool. You could feel the energy shift. This was no longer about political grandstanding. It was confrontation, and the mic was still on. But what came next made everything, before it feel like a warm-up. The air was already tight, but when Jasmine flipped the next page, it felt like a spark hit gasoline. She did not speak right away. Silence filled the space for a few seconds. Then she looked up and said, "This is not just about money or trips. It's about honesty. It's about what is said behind closed doors, when people think no one is listening. And I have transcripts." That word hit like a blow. Greene's jaw tightened. "Transcripts of what?" she demanded, leaning forward. "Phone calls," Jasmine answered. "One from March 9th last year, another in July, both discussing how PAC funds were redirected toward personal real estate investments. One of those properties was purchased in Flagler Beach, Florida." A quiet gasp came from somewhere in the audience. "You're lying," Greene barked. "This is made up, completely fabricated." Jasmine did not react. She calmly pulled out a small document and slid it down the table to the clerk. Then she looked at the chairman. "For the record," she said, "I have submitted this to be included in the official hearing documentation. These documents, these transcripts, were reviewed, and 2 independent sources confirmed them before I even agreed to read them here. Greene now looked clearly upset. She glanced from side to side, but no one stepped in to defend her. There was nothing to say. From the back row, a reporter silently mouthed, "Oh my God," to a colleague as she reached for her phone. Jasmine continued. In the March 9th call, one of Representative Greene's aides talks about moving $20,000 from the Freedom Rising PAC into a private account. That account belongs to a Florida-based LLC, which is owned by her brother-in-law, she went on. When asked why, the aide says, and I quote, "We need it for the beach house. Contractors are already waiting." The room went completely silent. Even the chairman did not reach for his gavel. Greene stood up. "This is slander. I do not even have a brother-in-law." Jasmine calmly lifted another page. "His name is Ronald Edgerton. He is married to your husband's sister, Kendra. Records show the LLC Bayrise Investments was registered just 2 months before the transfer. I have the Florida State business filing right here." Now the room did not just react. It changed. One of Greene's staff members quietly walked out from the side wall. Another picked up her phone and began typing quickly. Greene, still standing, was clearly shaken. "You are lying," she shouted. "You are a dishonest, attention-seeking liar." Jasmine raised her eyebrows slightly, but her voice remained steady. "Then why did the bank flag the wire transfer? Why is there an internal note showing a fraud investigation was opened, and then closed 2 weeks later without any public disclosure?" She leaned back slightly, keeping her eyes on Greene. "Because you assumed no one would ask questions. But I did." Cameras were still rolling. Finally, the chairman spoke. "We will take a 5-minute recess." "No, we will not," Jasmine replied. "I am not finished." Just like that, she regained control of the room. In July, she continued, there was another call, this time with a developer based in San Diego. Same PAC, same LLC. She paused briefly. This time it was a $50,000 consulting payment, labeled as a security consultation. But the man on the other end of the call confirmed they never met, never spoke, and never signed a contract. The chairman opened his mouth slightly like he wanted to say something, but no words came. Jasmine turned to him. "Sir, these are not just claims. These are financial records. We sit in this room claiming to serve the public. But if we will not examine our own behavior, what are we actually doing here?" She stood and looked around the chamber, letting the weight of that question settle. Greene had gone silent. Her face had turned red. Her hands were no longer moving. They sat frozen. On the table, and outside the chamber, the press was already preparing headlines. Jasmine was not just pointing out misconduct. She was pushing forward what could become a major political reckoning. The atmosphere in the hearing room had shifted. It felt heavier, as if the air itself had changed. Greene leaned back into her chair, arms crossed, lips pressed so tightly together, it seemed like she was biting back her anger. She was not used to being questioned. Not like this, not while being recorded, and not before the entire country. Jasmine reached for a slimmer file this time. Its cover read, "Private Travel Disbursements, 2021-2023. Let us talk about the travel," she said, looking directly at Greene. "The ones marked as strategic sessions, but linked instead to private donors, real estate agents, and even a few cryptocurrency investors based in Scottsdale, Arizona." There it was, a new layer. Not just PAC-related misuse, not just misreported campaign spending, something more complex, less visible, more questionable. Greene shook her head and gave a short, forced laugh. "Crypto? Are you really serious right now?" "I am," Jasmine replied, "because I do not believe the American people expect their representatives to be staying at the Phoenician, paid for by unregistered lobbyists." While calling it research, she turned to the next page. April 2022. You flew to Scottsdale on a private jet, registration number N549TW. That plane is owned by a company called Orbit Holdings. The owner, Leonard March, is under an ongoing IRS investigation for wire fraud across borders. The name caused a stir. People in the gallery started murmuring again. Phones came out. Notes were scribbled. "You stayed 3 nights in a luxury suite," Jasmine continued lightly, tapping a sheet. "I have the invoice right here, fully paid by Orbit, and yet not once did it appear on your financial disclosures." Greene's expression twitched. "That is not mine to report," she said. He invited me. I did not pay. Exactly, Jasmine replied. Which is the issue? Accepting undisclosed gifts from someone under federal investigation, especially while you sit on the oversight committee, is not just questionable. It is unethical, maybe illegal. The chair briefly looked up from his notes but did not stop her. No one did. Jasmine turned another page. May 2023. Sedona. Another private flight. This one arranged by a group of donors connected to Westbridge Energy, she paused. A lobbying group based in Dallas focused on oil interests. 2 of those donors had open cases in front of the Environmental Affairs Subcommittee. That landed even harder. Stop it, Greene said. Her voice was unsteady. You are twisting this. You know how it works. Members get invitations. We attend. It is part of the job. Jasmine raised one hand, calm. It is not the appearance, it is the pattern. The same names, same flights, same hotels, over and over, and not one disclosure. She stepped aside from the mic and walked slowly across the front of the dais. Her voice softened slightly, not weak but personal. Let me ask you something, Congresswoman, Jasmine said, pausing. Why did you meet with Nicholas Averill, the CEO of Westbridge, 3 weeks after voting against the Clean Water Accountability Act? That vote blocked the amendment that would have limited runoff exemptions for oil companies like his. Greene blinked. I did not meet him, she replied. You were photographed with him on a terrace at El Encanto, Jasmine said evenly. The post was made, then taken down. A clerk slid a printed screenshot across the table. There it was. Greene, smiling in sunglasses, sitting next to a man holding a whiskey glass, a badge visible on his jacket that read Nicholas A. The photo moved around the room quickly. You did not know the camera caught you, Jasmine added. But the internet remembers everything. Greene tried to speak. Her mouth opened, closed, then opened again. She picked up her water glass, but did not take a sip. Jasmine paused. This is not about party lines, she said. It is about trust. You have built a brand on being anti-elite, anti-corruption, anti-establishment. But what happens when that image cracks? No one answered. Greene said nothing, but silence could not stop what was already happening outside. The story had already started spreading, faster than anyone in that room could contain. Marjorie Taylor Greene was known for never backing down. Her entire image was built on pushing back, louder, harder, more forcefully than anyone else in the room. But now, as she sat at the table surrounded by records, photos, and a committee watching closely, her usual fight seemed to fade. The unraveling began slowly. It showed first in her fingers, tapping hard on the desk, then in her eyes, shifting quickly across the room, searching for someone to step in. No one moved. Not this time. Then she snapped. This is an ambush, she yelled, jumping up so fast. Her chair scraped loudly. This entire hearing is just an attack job. Where is the due process? The chairman tried to speak. Congresswoman Greene, please. No, she shouted. I will not sit here while some activist in a blazer reads off lies written by who even knows. She pointed a shaky finger at Jasmine Crockett. The room went still again. Jasmine, still standing at her podium, looked up. I have given names, records, documents, photos, timestamps. Nothing here is theory. You just do not like what is being shown. You are out of line, Greene said through her teeth. No, Jasmine replied. I am finally in line, and I am not stepping aside. The way she said it, clear, calm, did not sound dramatic. It sounded something more serious. It sounded real, the kind of real that people feel across a screen. A staffer tried slipping Greene a note. She shoved it away. Why not talk about your donors? Greene shouted. Why not talk about all the dark money behind your campaign, Jasmine? You think you are clean? You think you are some kind of hero? I am not here to perform, Jasmine replied steadily. I am here to ask questions. The public deserves answers. And every time you yell or dodge a question, you show exactly why those answers matter. The chairman tried again. Let us bring order back to the hearing. But Greene was not finished. You want drama? Fine, she snapped. Here it is. I have nothing to hide. Nothing. Unlike the rest of you who smile for the cameras and lie behind closed doors. Jasmine slightly tilted her head. Then explain the third account under your name, tied to Atlantic East Solutions LLC, she said. It connects to a short-term rental in Tampa. That property received several deposits from political action committees. Right after you voted against rental reform, the words hit hard. Greene gave no response. That was the difference now. Earlier, she had shouted and pushed back, but now for the first time she looked uncertain, worn down, exposed, and the cameras caught it all. Outside the room, the story was already spreading. Cable news had cut into regular shows. The video had gone viral before Jasmine even returned to her seat. People were not just watching, they were analyzing. Some celebrated, some panicked, some were unsure what to believe, but none could look away. Inside, what started as an argument had turned into something more like an inquiry. You could sense it. The mood had shifted. The other committee members were no longer just sitting by. Now they looked uneasy, genuinely uneasy. Jasmine did not say another word for the rest of that section. She did not need to. She simply closed the folder in front of her and quietly picked up a glass of water. Greene sat there, still angry. But her anger was turning into something else, something closer to fear. But fear often leads to rash choices. And Greene was not someone who walked away quietly. The hearing wrapped up 15 minutes early. The gavel came down quickly. Committee members filed out with tight expressions and half-written notes. The tension was not just in the hearing, it spilled into every hallway, elevator, and phone inside the Capitol. Jasmine Crockett did not hurry. She stood still, gathered her documents, and ignored the noise, the looks, and the three staffers, asking if she would give a statement in the hallway. She gave them all the same answer. Not yet. In the hallway, Marjorie Taylor Greene was pacing. No cameras, just voices, and she was raising hers. "You do not let a junior congresswoman walk in here and try to tear me down." She barked at her aide, a sharp-eyed man in his 30s gripping a phone tightly. This was a setup. Someone is behind her. "I want names." He nodded. "We are working on it. We have a statement ready." Blaming political targeting, deep state tactics, the usual stuff. "Release it now? Wait for now, and tell Tucker I'll go on the show tonight," she snapped. 10 minutes, no filler. Just around the corner, Jasmine walked past a group of staffers who stopped whispering when they saw her. She made no eye contact except with one, a young black intern, maybe 19 or 20, looked at her not with just admiration but something deeper, gratitude. Jasmine gave a faint smile and kept walking. 2 floors up, in a quieter hallway, Representative Alan Dorsey, a centrist from Oregon, was already on a call with his chief of staff. "We need distance," he said firmly. "I don't care what she meant to the base. This is going to explode." "You think her files are legit?" the voice asked. She read them too smoothly. That wasn't performance. That was a plan. Outside, the press had taken over Independence Avenue. Cameras on every corner. Microphones clipped to jackets. A CNN reporter was rehearsing his segment while producers counted down from 10. Everyone wanted a piece of the story. Inside a side room, Greene sat with her communications director and one of her lawyers. Her tone had shifted. Less fire, more strategy. "What's the worst case here?" she asked, eyes fixed on the table. The lawyer, an older man with a graying beard, cleared his throat. "If Crockett's documents hold up and she calls for a formal ethics review, it could lead to censure. Maybe worse. The financial records alone could cause problems. FEC issues, tax flags, maybe even DOJ interest if they start digging." Greene did not reply. She just stared. "What about support from the public?" asked the COAM's director. "We will hold the base," Greene said. "They don't care about company names or flight numbers. They care that I push back." The lawyer gave her a look. "They care until it starts to feel like you misled them." Meanwhile, in a small back office behind the hearing room, Jasmine sat with her chief of staff, sipping cold coffee. "They will say this was a setup," her aide said. "They will call you a prop, a tool, everything." Jasmine gave a quiet smile, though there was weight behind it. "They can say anything they want," she said. "But when I go home and look people in the eye, I will know one thing for sure." "What's that?" "I told the truth, and I brought the proof." Truth was Jasmine's defense, but Greene was already working on her counterattack, and she had no plans to follow the same rules. By the time the hearing resumed the next day, everything had shifted. It was no longer just a congressional session. It was an event. News trucks lined the streets. Cable networks flashed red banners with urgent headlines. Headlines in bold red: "Congress in crisis," "Greene under fire," Crockett delivers evidence. Was it all a lie? Inside, the committee chamber filled up an hour before the gavel. Reporters sat closely packed, fingers moving quickly over keyboards. Lawmakers who usually showed up late were now arriving early. Their expressions were blank, phones in hand. Jasmine Crockett entered quietly, a manila folder under her arm, carrying a steady calm that unsettled the room. Greene had stayed silent since the outburst, but today she appeared in a sharper suit, fresh makeup, and a new look, cool and deliberate. Jasmine did not wait. As soon as the chair gave her the floor, she stood and spoke. "Yesterday, I presented records related to campaign violations and undisclosed gifts," she said. "But there is one more document I held off on, waiting to confirm his details. Now that I have, I believe both the committee and the public should see it." She placed the manila folder on the table and opened it carefully. "This is a draft agreement between Representative Greene and a Nevada-based investment group, Ridge Hill Partners," she continued. The document was dated February 2023, 2 weeks before Greene introduced a bill to reduce capital gains taxes on private energy assets. A few audible gasps came from the committee. Jasmine held up the first page, displaying a clear letterhead with both Greene's name and Ridge Hill's. This document contains language requesting Greene's continued support for deregulation policies in exchange for undisclosed financial shares in one of their subsidiaries, Horizon Aggregate Ventures, she said. "That firm holds major interests in fracking sites across the Midwest." Greene stood up. "That is fake. That is not even my signature." Jasmine remained calm. An independent handwriting analyst reviewed it. The signature matches 5 other documents filed with the Georgia Secretary of State. Greene's face lost color. A reporter near the back whispered, "That's it." But Jasmine was not done. The deal was never made public. The bill she proposed did not pass. "But the meaning of this document remains clear," she said. "It is an offer, exchanging political support for personal benefit." The room went quiet, not out of respect, but because no one knew how to respond. One of Greene's lawyers leaned in and said something low. Greene leaned back, visibly rattled. "You do not know what you are doing," she said, her voice uneven. "You are tearing everything down." "For what?" Jasmine answered calmly and directly. "For accountability." The chairman leaned forward. "Representative Crockett, are you formally requesting that this document be submitted to the House Ethics Committee?" Jasmine nodded. "Yes, along with the full set of supporting records which have been uploaded to a secure congressional server and are now accessible to all committee members." The clerk approached and took the folder. A camera clicked outside. Viewers watching. Leave were already responding. Thousands of comments poured in. Even conservative media voices struggled to defend Greene without sounding out of touch. Inside the room, Greene sat down slowly. Her hands stayed still, her face unchanged. Something had shifted in her, not just anger, not just irritation. It was the realization that this was more than just a public hearing. It was now a legal risk, a political threat. And the most troubling part? She had no idea what else Jasmine might still be holding back. But Jasmine had already made her case. Now the real question was whether the system would act or just observe. By mid-afternoon, the story was everywhere. It did not matter which network you turned on. MSNBC, Fox News, CNN, even small local channels in places like Tulsa, Boise, and Fresno were covering it. People were not only watching clips from the hearing, they were debating in diners, whispering during Sunday service, and discussing it in lunchrooms at work. Social media lit up. Hashtags like Jasmine Crockett exposes Greene, Salur's Packgate, and Greene collapse all surged at once. The YouTube video of the hearing crossed 2 million views in just 4 hours. Short 10-second clip of Greene slamming her hands on the desk was posted with the caption, "When receipts hit harder than opinions." It spread instantly. In Shreveport, Louisiana, a barbershop had the TV on. Curtis, the owner, paused halfway, threw a haircut and said, "Man, she got her good. Live on TV. That ain't politics, that's precision." In Cedar Rapids, Iowa, 2 retired school teachers, lifelong conservatives, watched from a diner booth beneath a small television. "She looked guilty," one of them said. "Never even tried to deny it after that last paper." She raised her voice, the other added. "But it did not help this time." It was that kind of moment. one that bypasses talking points and hits people directly. No matter where you stood politically, Greene's collapse was not just news. It was something larger. And Jasmine? She became a national figure overnight. Clips of her calm presence spread fast. One tweet said, "If Grace Under Fire had a face, it would be Jasmine Crockett." A TikTok remix used her quote, "I told the truth and I told it with receipts," as a chorus over a bass track. Teenagers who had never even heard of a House hearing were now quoting her online. Cable news fell behind. Some anchors tried to paint it as just partisan drama, but the public was not buying it. The evidence was too detailed, the documents too solid, and Greene's silence stood out. Even her strongest supporters started to question things. At a town hall in Grand Junction, Colorado, a woman in a green 2022 sweatshirt stood up and asked something her representative did not expect. "Why is no one talking about the PAC money? If it was fake, she would have said so, loud." She hasn't. Call-in shows lit up. Some people stood by Greene, others did not. "She fought for us," said one caller from Wichita. But now it looks like she might have just fought for herself. Online, right-wing influencers hesitated. A few tried digging up old videos or tweets to discredit Jasmine. None of it stuck. She had not raised her voice. She had not gone low. She had shown records and stood firm. The criticism bounced off her. Meanwhile, congressional offices were overwhelmed. Some calls demanded Greene step down. Others called for a full inquiry. A few simply asked for clarity. The Speaker's office declined to comment. But insiders leaked that a quiet discussion had already happened behind closed doors. There was talk of possible censure, or worse. And through all this, Jasmine remained silent. No interviews, no media rounds, just a short statement posted on her official site, thanking voters for their support and reaffirming her focus on transparency. That silence said more than any press conference could, because while Greene's team rushed to control the fallout, Jasmine did not need to say anything else. The public had already made up its mind, but as the reaction grew louder, the pressure increased for someone in charge to actually take action. By the third day, Greene's office looked more like a command center than a workspace. Blinds were shut. Phones rang constantly. Staff whispered in corners. Her chief of staff, eyes red and clearly exhausted, stood at the copier jabbing buttons like he was angry at the machine. "Is she coming in?" one aide asked quietly. "She's still in the conference room," another replied. On the phone, legal again. Inside that room, Marjorie Taylor Greene sat slouched over the speakerphone, surrounded by paperwork, cold coffee, and 3 exhausted aides. "She is not stopping," her attorney said. "She is steady. No leaks, no sound bites, just records. That is serious." "So what do I do?" Greene asked, rubbing her forehead. "You do not resign," the lawyer answered, "but you also cannot go live again. Every time you talk, it gets worse. We need to release a statement, and it has to be very carefully written." Greene shook her head. "I do not do careful." "You do now," he said firmly. In the Capitol cafeteria, 2 aides from separate offices exchanged looks over their lunch trays. "She was always loud," one of them said, "but now she is quiet. That is how you know it is serious." At the same time, Jasmine Crockett's office was handling calls from reporters, public officials, and even former lawmakers. Some called to congratulate her. Others expressed support. A few stayed, vague, just in case the situation shifted again. But Jasmine did not brag. She did not celebrate. That Friday, she returned to her district office and joined a meeting on housing issues with a group of senior residents in Dallas. "You are not tired?" her aide asked gently afterward. "I am always tired," she said with a small smile, "but I am not finished." Back in Washington, things started changing quickly. A bipartisan group on the House committee began going over the documents Jasmine had submitted. It was not yet a formal inquiry, but it was the first step, and a step that usually takes months. This time, it only took a few days. One after another, Greene supporters started stepping back. Some issued vague messages about waiting for facts. Others avoided press altogether. Only the fringe voices stayed loud, posting online theories, calling Jasmine a plant, claiming the records were fake, even though none had been disproven. By the next week, 3 Republican lawmakers quietly pushed for an internal ethics review. That move was not minor. It showed Greene's own party was no longer standing by her without question. She released a written statement 2 days later. No apology, no admission, just a claim that Jasmine Crockett was misusing the system to attack real patriots. But by then, the public mood had already turned. Newspaper editorials around the country began focusing on truth, ethics, and what character in leadership should mean. And in Greene's home district, a local poll showed her support had dropped by 20 points in just 1 week. 20 points. At a Rotary Club in Macon, Georgia, a former donor stood up and told the room, "I do not care what letter is next to your name. If you lie to the public and get caught, you should not be representing them." The consequences were not just political, they became personal. Staff members thought about leaving. Donors stopped replying. Lobbyists suddenly became unavailable. But Jasmine Crockett stayed, focused. She kept doing her job. She kept answering emails. She had not brought her opponent down with attacks or drama. She did it through documents, with calm, with facts, and the country paid attention. But the real test was not what happened to Greene. It was what Congress and the public would do after. By the end of the month, the headlines started to slow down. The media attention faded, but the questions remained. If anything, those questions were clearer now. People all across the country had witnessed something rare. Evidence presented with focus, no drama, and no backtracking. For once, a political moment had come across as sincere. In interviews across the nation, people kept saying the same thing. She did not yell. She did not insult. She just showed the facts. At a community center in Akron, Ohio, a pastor told his congregation during a Sunday sermon, "Integrity is quiet. Loud is not always right. And truth does not need to shout." Jasmine Crockett was not chasing media attention. She did not hire a new press agent. She did not appear on every show that invited her. Instead, she chose to speak with a local journalist in Dallas. The conversation was calm and focused. "Did you hope this would be a takedown?" the journalist asked. "No," Jasmine replied clearly. "I wanted people to see what happens when you follow the evidence. I wanted them to understand that real strength is not about volume. It is about being ready." The journalist nodded. "Are you worried someone will come after you for this?" "No, that is possible, but I am not afraid," she said. "I did not do this to win a fight. I did it because people deserve more than tricks and distraction." That phrase, "more than tricks and distraction," stuck in Washington. The House Ethics Committee officially opened a review into Greene's campaign finances. It was a quiet decision, no press release, just a formal notice that her records were being checked. For Greene, the crisis did not go away. It simply moved behind closed doors. She brought in legal advisors. Her staff began to leave. Travel was reduced. Once a regular on evening news panels, she now turned down media requests. No more short, camera-ready responses, just silence and planning. Meanwhile, Jasmine's influence continued to rise. She was invited to speak at major universities, Georgetown, Howard, UC Berkeley, not as a hero, but as a thoughtful voice. She repeated the same advice. Do not mistake loud for right. Be informed, and never fear the truth. High school students sent letters. Young women wrote about finally seeing someone like them stand up with documents and reveal a lie. Voters said they felt recognized, that someone had finally said what many had thought for a long time. Politics does not have to be a performance. And maybe, just maybe, facts still matter. One evening, Jasmine was invited to speak at a town hall in Garland, Texas. The room was full, standing room only. There were no campaign banners, no catchy slogans, just everyday people, black, white, Latino, young and old, waiting to hear from her. The woman who had stood firm in front of one of the most aggressive voices in Congress. She stepped to the microphone and looked out at them. "I am not here to talk about scandals or headlines," she said. "I am here to talk about what comes next." Because what happened in that hearing was not about one person. It was about what we let happen in our politics, and whether we still care. Enough to ask, is this honest? Is this fair? Is this really who we want to be? She paused, then added, "Power without truth is just noise, and we have heard enough of that." The room responded, not with shouting or anger, but with applause. Slow, steady, from people who finally felt someone understood them. Later that night, back at home, Jasmine sat alone at her kitchen table. The The binder from the hearing still sat in her bag. She had not touched it since. She did not need to. She already knew what was in it. And now, so did everyone else. Because truth, spoken plainly and without fear, does more than win debates. It changes the conversation. If this story meant something to you, share it with someone who still values truth, honesty, and accountability, and subscribe for more stories that truly matter.